Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Late Pride. My name is Wallace Chapman, and depending on where you stand, pride can be a sin or a virtue. St. Augustine said it is the love of one's own excellence. So on the one hand, you've got the humble pride of, a Sir Edmund Hillary. On the other, you've got Mike Hosking. Or Winston Peters. Pride was actually the original sin and seen as the most serious of the 7 deadly sins. Not wrath, not envy, nor even lust. It was pride that provided the catalyst to all the other sins. And the best known example, Lucifer's massive ego made him believe he was better than God. That caused his fall from heaven and thus his transformation into Satan. And so causing what makes humans human, being imperfect and fallible. Dante's Divine Comedy sees people fully endowed with too much pride, being forced to walk with stone slabs bearing down on their backs to induce feelings of humility. It was seen as that big a deal. But what of pride in the modern world? It is an essential ingredient in self-esteem, of course, but how much pride is too much pride? In the rather self-obsessed world of Facebook, where you upload and share every fragment of your life. For example, today I posted that I really felt like a Lamington. I did. Has vanity got out of control, particularly amongst the self-focused me generation? And having restored our national pride with a Rugby World Cup victory, what else can we justifiably be proud of? And will it come before a fall? So tonight we look at all these issues, and we're going to have questions, please, from the real stars, which are yourselves, from the audience. But please, will you welcome Associate Professor at Massey University, author and expert on the history of religion, Dr. Peter Lineham, in the far corner. We also have Independent Maori Statutory Board Chief Executive, Brandi Hudson. Round of applause for Brandi. Kia ora. Good to have you here. We also have Gordon McLauchlan, journalist, author, broadcaster, and well known to many of you as a long-running man on the scene. Gordon McLauchlan, welcome to the show. Welcome to the panel, Gordon. Good to have you here. And setting the framework for this discussion tonight as part of the overarching theme of the 7 deadly sins. What was pride in relation to the 7 deadly sins? So, and was I right? Is it the sin above all sins?
Yes, it is. Indeed, some theologians argued, I think Pope Gregory the Great, when the first sort of formation of the notion of 7 deadly sins was established, I think he regarded it as the supreme of all the sins, because in it all other sins were explained. They made sense of them, because the coherence of most of the various sins that we're going to be looking at over the next little while with these late at the museum, each of them is only an end. It's not really a fulfillment, whereas pride pulled it all together. So Satan bestrode the world, and his hubris, his enormous sense of brooding presence that he was greater than he was, meant that it created that destructive instinct that lay at the very heart of pride. So I think that was the theology. And, subsequent theologians, Dante, Luther and the like, picked it up and developed in that way. It's a strange view, because that was not the tradition of Greek philosophy.
No, Aristotle thought the opposite, didn't he?
Yeah, Aristotle saw pride as one of the supreme virtues.
Would the meaning of the word pride have changed since the Bible was, since the King James version? I mean, I think it seems to me that pride nowadays means something a little different from that, and vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
I think vanity changed, Gordon. I mean, yeah. I think that vanity of vanities doesn't make any sense to us in the way that they were talking about it. I think pride, it's a pity hubris doesn't have a kind of modern equivalent, because it feels such a powerful word. But yeah. I think the heart of the word pride, and the fact that it's always had these two histories, positive and negative, all the way through, tells us something quite important that we've got to explore tonight. We've got to make sense of how pride is both an incredibly destructive thing.
Yes.
It's no accident that people go back to the great writers are great writers, and that piece tonight of Jane Austen's, I think, says something else, and says something that I believe in. It says, vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. A person may be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what we would have others think. And it seems to me that pride is not a virtue in itself, but it's a stepping stone to virtue. I mean, having pride in yourself is okay as long as you've got something to be proud of and you haven't got too much of it.
Well, I want to ask Brandi, I want to bring Brandi into it. Yep.
Geez, that was really brain. I was really concentrating on what these two were saying. Somebody help.
Tell me, what does pride mean to you?
Well, as the guys were talking, I was thinking of the many radical people, and if I think of radical people that come to my mind, like Donawa Tere and Annette Sykes and Hone Harawira and his mum, and Māori people that are very radical. When I hear that, I go, that's pride. They're proud of our culture, that radicalness. As much as it made some of us scared or some of us very uncomfortable and some of us maybe really negative about Māori things, that radicalness really demonstrated their pride for their culture and the fight that they wanted to fight. So that's how I sort of have interpreted pride, just after I said.
But then others, if you put your talkback hat on though, that's not pride in our culture. That's Annette Sykes, Hone Harawira, stirrers.
They're bloody good stirrers though, because they're scary stirrers, I suppose. But when I look at when they stand up and they fight for te reo, and you see what's happened with Kohanga Reo and Kura Kaupapa, and now for goodness sakes we have wānanga. So that whole pride in our language, which has got us so much, so many services and opportunities.
When you see Maori pride, I mean, I just recall growing up in Maori in South Auckland, and I was at a time when this is the sort of mid-late 70s when, well, for example, my dad was from the islands. There was a trend actually to sort of disown, say, your Pacific name or your Pacific sort of hood or your Māori hood. And that was a sort of concerted thing in the 70s. How far have we come in terms of Māori pride?
Well, I was at the All Blacks game. I went to watch the All Blacks play who? Ireland and Hamilton. And when I got there was that wonderful girl Marvelli. I've forgotten her first name. What's her name? Do you know? Marvelli?
No, he's the rugby man here.
The girl Marvelli. When we walked into the stadium and she was singing in the middle of the field that lovely Kiri Te Kanawa song, E papa la 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 la. So she was singing the song. I'm going, this is crazy. That chick's out there singing this Māori song. And then the radio announcer got up and the announcer for the evening got up and he said, right, when you hear this thing, you've got to go, oe. And I'm like, I can't believe this. I'm at this All Black game and they're making us do oe because normally they would do that ola or whatever they do for the
Mexican thing.
Mexican way.
Thing.
So they finally figured out it's not about Mexicans in New Zealand, it's about Māori things. So we all had to go, oe. So you had all these little Pākehā kids that were sitting in front of us going, oe. And then at half time they brought Marvelli back out again and she sang E Papa Waiari, in a very operatic way. But everybody was kind of like really engaged. So I'm just like, if the All Blacks are doing that, if marketing of our worldwide sport has realised that we're more than just the karakia at the beginning and a man running out, to do the whittle or the challenge, that the pride in our culture must be growing.
It is a little bit manufactured, though, don't you think? I mean, I'm struck by... I do think cultures need to go through a phase when they overcome the kind of shame and guilt of feeling that they're at the bottom. Because I think we do have an inherent ranking of cultures. And tends to be that kind of Māori pride or whatever pushes, Pacifica pride or whatever, pushes itself and says, not only are we not worse than you, we're better than you. But I mean, it's all nonsense. It doesn't mean anything to say we're better.
I'm glad you're singing E Papa and not some other, some other song. I was glad about that. So
but that is manufactured. Look, I see pride as a personal thing. I think once you take it out of the personal level, you destroy it to some degree. I mean, you know, people should be proud if they've got good manners. People should be proud of their ability to learn and work hard.
Hang on.
Those are things that people should be proud of.
Are you saying that you don't have any semblance of national pride in your country?
I find national pride a very dangerous area. I think my old saying is that a rat bag wrapped in an American flag is still a rat bag. A rat bag wrapped in a New Zealand flag is still a rat bag. That kind of patriotism, which Americans take to an extreme, I find anathema.
What do you make of what he just said, Brandi?
What did he say?
National pride. He doesn't. He doesn't really sort of see much in national pride. And pride's a personal thing.
Yeah.
You know, there is the madness of crowds as well. You know, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to individual attitude to life. Pride is something you should have in yourself and that other people should have in themselves, not to too great a degree where it becomes vanity. I can tell you, I know some people who are terribly talented, mainly actors, or not so much actors, but people who performers, who have so much a very shallow vanity, and their estimate of themselves depends entirely on what other people think of them. Their fans, their crowd. Without them, they're nothing. Whereas I think pride is something that leads you to, you've got to have good reasons to have it.
Well, that's quite a controversial thing to say, really, especially in the Auckland Museum, where the people gather for Anzac Day in Gallipoli. Yeah. Hands up those in the audience that do believe in a national pride. Or a sense of belonging. Hands up those who agree with Gordon McLauchlan. That's interesting. Okay, about 20%.
No, I call the count on that.
I find that very comfortable.
Okay.
Well, just talking about pride. When I was at school, when you got given a certificate for something that you did well, it was usually so rare that you got it, that when you got it, you felt really proud that you got that certificate, or you got what they used to give you a blues award for sport. And now, in my kids' generation, they give you a certificate for showing up. They give you a certificate. They give you a badge. You know, if you smiled and you behaved, they give you a badge if you didn't. You know, if you wore the right shoes. And so, you know, my kids get all these certificates. They don't have any pride in that certificate, and we just chuck them out.
What you're saying is true. I mean, it's got to come from inside you. It can't come from. Pride cannot be bestowed upon you by other people. You have to learn. I have a grandson, for example, one of the 4 grandchildren I've got, who's got natural good manners. I mean, he just seems to be such a person who thinks of other people. Now, I go out of my way to say that is fantastic. You should cultivate that, and I don't give them a prize for it. But, you know, you should encourage people to have pride in the things they can do. You should encourage them to accomplish things and have pride in what they've accomplished. You cannot bestow it from outside, and you cannot get it from, you know, Maori culture is wonderful. It does wonderful things for people, but individual Maori have to have the pride in themselves and what they do. That's much more important than having a broad-based pride in something called Maori culture.
But don't you think what's happening in our culture and is kind of a simple kind of psychological trick, that the theory is that if you flatter people enough and you tell them to take pride in it, you turn their heads around, and so they begin to be something other than they might be. And so pride is both an incredible lie and the only way to get any results.
All right, question from here.
Yeah, I was just interested in the idea of national identity and national pride, and what Wallace was saying earlier about you know, not subscribing to pride and loyal. How do you find a consensus without and what to be proud in for a nation?
How do you find consensus in what to be proud of as a nation? Well, often it's sport, isn't it? That's one. But Peter, do you want to sort of pick up on that?
Well, worry about 80,000 is a low estimate of unemployed people in New Zealand between the age of 15 and 25. That's a good thing to get proud about. Handle that. Let's start worrying about that, and don't say there are no economic ways of doing it. That's something that we could be really proud of. All around the world, young people are out of work and putting up with it. It's an outrage. It's a time bomb, and it's a stupidity.
But alongside that, you know, I think pride is one of those historical accidents that happen because things happen. You know, that would rugby have been the national sport if it had not been for the 1905 tour of England? You know, that's, you know, a series of strange flukes have created the things that make a people and give them identity. And there's nothing inevitable about that. Well, and we just take a certain pride in the kind of...
I don't agree with that. I don't think anything is inevitable. I think you have to make things happen, and that's what I'm suggesting, that you could build a... We built the country in the late 1930s and got out of the Depression before any other country in the world.
We'll have one more question.
I'm always disappointed when I hear New Zealanders talk about us punching above our weight. I think that crosses the line between pride and vanity, and you can think it, but you shouldn't say it. And I think it's the national equivalent of short ass syndrome. Does anyone agree with that?
Well, punching above our weight, well said, well said. And I won't bring that up anymore in the future panels. Finally, because we've got another an hour or so of fantastic entertainment, and I don't want to cut into that time because I'm excited to see it myself. Just briefly around the panel, Peter, what are you most proud of? Well, this week, what are you being proud of?
My pride changes from week to week, but I'm really proud of these pants. You know?
Fantastic, I knew it. Well done. Yes, you are. And only the way that you could wear them. Gordon. What are you most proud of, Brandi? This week, last year?
You know, I must say the sports thing does kind of come to the surface for me. I suppose, you know, with the Rugby World Cup, with the Olympics around the corner, there's a lot of pride that I have in the sports community. But I'm very proud of, you know, people that, anybody that can step beyond that little wee safe box, you know, people that that go all out and are passionate about things. I'm proud that there are New Zealanders that have that.
Gordon and McLauchlan, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of the way that New Zealand has dealt with the Treaty of Waitangi. It's been an inter-party thing, and I think they've done that very well. Better than any other country in the world, I think. There were a lot of treaties signed around the Western world and Australia in the 19th century, and very few of them, if any of them, were honoured. I also am proud of the way that the feminist movement in New Zealand has given women such pride. Those are the two things to me that New Zealand can be proud of. Now, there are a whole lot of other things that we could be proud of by beating poverty and taking those sorts of causes to the level we've taken Maori, the Treaty of Waitangi, and feminism.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Dr. Peter Lineham. Fantastic. For Brandi Hudson and for Gordon McLauchlan. Well done. Thank you so much for coming.